Hey everybody, it's Captain C.A. Richardson from Flats Class University and Flats Class YouTube. Today we're going to talk about a tip I think that's going to help you this winter. When the water chills off, need to fish a little bit deeper. We're going to talk a little bit about the Mirrodine Heavy Dean. So, the Heavy Dean. What's so different about the Heavy Dean than the standard 17 MR? Or if I wanted to fish the 27 MR, you might even think that the 27 MR sinks faster than the 17 MR. Well, it doesn't. They have a much slower sink rate, and they're better for shallow water conditions. But the Heavy Dean is my favorite when fish move off the flat into the intercoastal, into deeper creeks, if you're river fishing, or if you're fishing, for instance, residential canals, all of you in Tampa Bay and Fort Myers and Cape Coral. Those of you in Jacksonville that fish those deeper creeks where there's docks coming off them. This is where the Heavy Dean really shines. The reason why? It has a much faster sink rate. In fact, it falls about 1 foot per second. So when you get in situations where you're fishing residential canals, for instance, and there's 8 to 12 feet of water in there because you see some sailboats or some of the bigger cruise type boats, trawler style boats, and you know the trout have moved off that nearby shallow flat and in there, well, the Heavy Dean's what you want to target those fish with. Now stay tuned because I'm going to tell you how you're going to do it. All right, let's talk a little bit about the differences between the 17 MR and the 18 MR, the Heavy Dean. The Heavy Dean, they denote it right on the bait. You see where it says Heavy Dean. That way you know, because they look so much alike, you'd never be able to tell them the difference. But when you start working them, you can definitely tell this sinks much faster, twice as fast, okay? Twice as fast. So it's going to be ideal for fishing 8 to 12 feet of water where you can count it down, 1 foot per second. You make a nice long cast down the center of that canal or down the edge of that creek where you know the hole is, let it wobble. It'll just sit there and wobble all the way down, gently fall until you get down there. If it's 8 feet deep, it takes 8 seconds. You'll see the slack in the line. And then next, I'm going to show you how I want you to work this bait. It's a little different than you think. It's almost like jigging. You know they're down there, they're hunkered down on the bottom, and this technique works excellent after a cold front. When it's really cold, you know the fish have left the flat and they settle down into the next deep spot. So how are you going to target them? You know they're sitting down there 8 to 12 feet deep. So you're going to make a cast with a Heavy Dean down past the landing zone where you expect the fish to be. And you're going to work it very methodically back. And the way you're going to do this is you're going to take your rod after the cast is made, and you're just going to jig the rod. You're going to go lift, lift, lift. Not sharp twitches, but lift, lift, lift. And what that does, because this bait falls down so fast, is you just want it to move about 2 to 3 feet max off the bottom, if that. Lift, little short lifts. Let it gently lift up, and then it will rock back down. On one of those come downs where it's just shimmering down, is when they're going to eat the bait. So that when you lift again, there's going to be weight there and you can just reel down tight. I like to use a medium heavy action rod for this particular bait, and we'll go over those specs. But all in all, this is an excellent technique by just lift, 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 and letting the bait fall down like you're slow jigging it, just like you're worming. Then reel down a little bit. You're not lifting and reeling. You're just lifting. Then you're putting your hand on the reel, taking up the slack, reeling down to the surface, and doing it again. That slow motion fishing with the Heavy Dean will produce. Now let's talk about the equipment that you're going to need. So let's talk about the components necessary to do this. One, obviously, is the 18 MR. This is the Heavy Dean. It's innocuously marked on the packaging and on the bait. That way you can disseminate between that and your normal 17 MRs that are in your box, because these fall twice as fast, 1 foot per second. I've got it spooled up on a Shimano 3000 XG Stratic, and I've got my 7-foot SWS medium heavy action with a medium fast flex. This is the perfect rod, really, because you need something that will load and cast well, because this bait, believe it or not, weighs nearly a ½ ounce. So it's heavy. So you need it to be able to make a nice smooth cast, the medium heavy action. And you're just doing gentle lifts. And in many of the zones that we're fishing, you're not only catching trout, you're catching flounder, because if there's boat docks in there, you're going to catch redfish and occasionally the snook. So you're definitely going to want a medium heavy. Attached to the lure itself, I've got a section right here of 20-pound, and I won't go all the way to the knot, but it's a 2-foot section of 20-pound fluorocarbon. It's going to be necessary, if you think you're in South Florida, to maybe up that to 30-pound. But I use 20-pound fluorocarbon. I use fluorocarbon for a lot of different reasons. In this case, we're slow fishing, so I like the invisibility of fluorocarbon and the fact that it sinks faster. It sinks much, much faster than the mono. Now let's wrap this up with a closing comment or two. So, if you're looking for a technique that's a little bit different, that's going to produce fish, most of all the speckled trout guys, but it'll catch flounder, redfish, snook. It's hard to beat the Heavy Dean. It truly, truly is one of my favorites. Just remember, it's all about that slow twitching and letting it fall down. Slow twitching and letting it fall down. Nothing fast. And don't reel anything but the slack out of your line. You don't want this thing yo-yoing through the water. You want just off the bottom, and then it just slowly falls. I promise you, one of those times when you go to lift, there's going to be weight there, and it's going to be what you want. A doggone good bite. So, I hope this little fishing tip puts a bunch more fish in your boat over the holidays. And please, if you like what you're seeing here at Flats Class YouTube and Flats Class University, like us, subscribe to us. We want to hear from you. We want to keep being able to produce quality content that is of value to all of you. Until next time, Captain C.A. Richardson, signing off, guys.